Okay, guys, we're talking about Lisa Frankenstein.
Lisa Frankenstein. It's directed by Zelda Williams. It's written by Diablo Cody. She wrote Juno, and she also wrote. You saw both of them in the theater, didn't you?
Yes.
Both of them were good movies. I think we both agree. I liked Juno out of the gate. Jennifer's Body, I didn't like it first.
Oh, I love Jennifer's Body.
Lisa Frankenstein. It's about a girl, Lisa Swallows. We find out that she's just gone through a traumatic event. Her mother got murdered in a kind of an oddball scene, I thought. Her dad, he has since remarried. She's got a new stepsister, Taffy. It's set in the 80s, and she's like a goth girl. Uh, and she goes and visits a tombstone ever died or something like that. What was the deal with the tombstone?
She went to visit this tombstone. It had a bust on it of this guy, and she found the bust attractive.
She goes to a party. She gets harassed.
Well, she gets drugged first.
Yeah, she gets drugged and she gets mildly harassed. Wasn't anything over the top. She goes home. Lightning strikes the tombstone, brings this guy to life, sort of. He busts into her house, and they go on their adventure. Trailers kind of made this movie out to be some kind of love story, and like almost the trailer I saw kind of almost made you think she had something to do with animating the body.
Reanimating, yes.
Yeah, she didn't. She was sitting in the house. The tone of the movie was a little bit odd. Was it a romance? Who are the good characters? Who are the bad characters? You're supposed to sympathize with Lisa. She really isn't that sympathetic. And later in the movie, she needlessly starts going off and helping kill these people. Absolutely no remorse. She just does it.
She doesn't have any remorse. I think the first death is the stepmother. Kind
Now
of
the
broke
stepmother is killed by uh he was
because
played by Cole Sprouse. Yeah, they call him the creature. That's all it's listed in the credits.
well, the creature comes in.
Uh Janet, the stepmom's name is Janet. She comes up and antagonizes Lisa.
The stepmother comes up and she's really outraged.
And the creature just kills her.
Yeah, just beats you, and they don't, she doesn't even bat an eye.
Now, for the first murder, which was the stepmom, Lisa didn't know what was going to happen. Okay, you get a semi pass for that, although you didn't act very remorseful. The second death, which is the kid that assaulted her, Doug, she just basically she lure him out to the forest, like
Yeah,
promise him
first,
a
yeah, she
date or
seemed
something like that.
first she puts a little note in his locker, and then he replies, and she reads it. And the next thing you know, there's this like small body of water with a bench in front of it, and that's where they meet. And then she takes him by the hand and she takes him into the woods. First, they chop his hand off, and then he takes off running. Then the creature just throws a hatchet in his back, kind of toss him into the grave.
The person we're supposed to root for in this movie at this point is now a sociopathic killer.
She uses this broken. Every time she puts him in this broken tinning booth, he reanimates even further.
She cut off the ear of the stepmom
Yep.
and sewed it on somehow.
Yeah, every
It's
time
like
they do it.
and then when they killed Doug, they cut his hand off and murder him later. But then they reattach the arm with a sewing machine. It's as stupid as it sounds. The whole tone of this movie is just off a little bit. Is it going to be silly or is it going to be dark and mysterious? Is it going to be a love story or is it going to be natural born killers? It's almost like they shot the movie and the tone wasn't working, so they switched to the other tone. And I'm not sure which came first. That's what I think.
And it was the trailers are misleading. They make you think that she is somehow reanimating him and using body parts
Yeah, no.
and slowly bringing him back to being human.
What also made it sound like it was going to be some kind of love story, and that was like a backseat thing. That was there, but it wasn't.
I think you're right about that. I don't.
Another thing about this movie, there was a theme of so Lisa was attracted to some kid in her class. The creature was, I think, attracted to Lisa. Lisa just was kind of using the creature up until a point.
There's a scene in the car where you can really see his facial expressions and her the way she's talking. that he's really in love with her.
The next thing they did, they went to the home of her crush and
Yes.
found him making out with her stepsister Taffy. Uh,
Yep.
Now, this was really the only negative thing about Taffy's character. They is she knew that Lisa liked this kid. A lot of times when you have like a mean, evil stepsister, it's going to be somebody who's rooting against you, who's trying to not make you fit in. So Taffy, to me, was really the a very sympathetic character in this movie. She was upset about her mom. She seemed to genuinely like Lisa, I
She tried,
thought.
yeah, she tried to include her with her friends, and she defended her. With her friends would say something about her like she was odd. She would
And she
try to
was
include her with.
aloof and she was snotty, but she wasn't vindictive. She wasn't mean. The only person you could really root for in the movie, well, there were two of them. You could root for the dad and the stepsister, and they were minor peripheral characters. The characters that were front and center were the creature and Lisa, and they were just they were the tone with those two was odd. It was just I don't know. The pacing in this movie is another thing I thought was odd. It was like an hour and 50 minutes, and some things went by in a blur. Like all of a sudden, we're sitting there at a party, and the next scene, I think I got up and went to the bathroom, and the next thing I know, I come back and the creature's marching through the house or something like that. Um, but then there were big parts of this movie that just drug on. Did you find that at all, or
I found the whole movie kind of hard to follow and hard to the way at the beginning, the way the creature just happens to find this particular house.
they after the creature kills the crush in probably the weirdest murder scene in a movie I've seen lately. Do you
But it's
remember that?
funny. But it's funny.
It's funny. Let's just say that somebody has their manhood removed, and then that gets attached to the creature, and the cops are closing in on them. And I don't care about giving spoiler alerts to this movie, and I looked it up, and this is actually what they. I mean, it was kind of unclear in the movie what happened, but the creature electrocuted her in that tanning booth that she had been using throughout the movie to attach his body parts. She actually did die, and then he apparently reanimated her. They never addressed that in the movie. It really wasn't that clear. Oh,
This movie's really hard to get a grasp on and really hard to talk about because it jumps around so much emotionally. There's no continuity, there's no moving forward. This scene pushes this scene forward, and this happens because of this. There's none of that. It just happens and strange and weird.
I've heard a lot of people say this movie could be a cult classic, and I don't really see that. I think if you looked at the story of the movie, it was a good story. I think that the just the general pacing of the movie is a little bit off. I mean, I would say my pluses for this movie is it's unique. It has a campy tone. The acting was really good. It has Catherine Newton in there. She was in Freaky, and she's going to be in some vampire movie in about 2 or 3 weeks. She's good at those roles. She was also was it Cassie in Ant-Man Quantum Mania? And that was a terrible movie, and that wasn't her fault. Uh, it has one of the other good actors is how do you pronounce her? Carla Gugino. How do you pronounce that?
Carla, I can't pronounce her
I
name.
don't know. Anyway, the stepmom character is the perfect evil stepmom. That's fine. I mean, she did a really good job. The probably the most sympathetic character in the movie was the stepsister, Taffy, who's played by Lisa Sabarano, who's apparently like a big to do in whatever country she's from. Minuses for me would be uh the main character we're supposed to like is not likable. The set design on these movies that they say is from the 80s, that they say are from the 80s, the set design kind of gets on my nerves because you lived in the 1980s. Everything was not that pink and bright. The only movie I think that gets the 80s kind of correct is Back to the Future. Go
Well,
back.
no, the back in the 80s, pastels was the color.
Not like that, dude. Not like that. I've got pictures. It was not that bright and crazy looking. I mean, maybe they did it campy, but it just kind of irritates me. If you go back and look at Back to the Future, whenever in okay, whenever Michael J. Fox's character goes to the future in Back to the Future 2, that looks like how, and it was like 2025 or whatever year it was. That the way that world looks in Back to the Future 2 is how they're making the 80s look in movies now. And that is not, everything was not just, you didn't sit in your living room with a giant Rubik's Cube behind you, and it just wasn't. I think they went a little bit over that. I mean, my grandparents' house was full of like dark mahogany wood, for crying out loud. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, my house still has the dark wood. I need to get rid of it. But
Well, yeah, but
yes,
according to that movie, every single house, every single person lived in some bright pink Barbie monstrosity.
a lot of the houses in the 80s had terrible wallpaper. Every room was a different color. It was darker, and a lot of houses had wood accent walls.
Uh, that was a negative for me. The pacing was a negative because at times I was just bored out of my mind looking at my phone, and the movie didn't do well. And I would have to say that I can understand that it just wasn't that great of a movie. Like, what were your pluses and minuses? What was your overall? What did you think of the movie?
Um, Found it confusing overall. I just thought it was confusing, and the trailers were misleading. But there was no cohesion between one scene and another. They
I
didn't
don't
make
know that they were.
sense.
That was the problem. It was like one scene for me. It was like one scene would be funny, and then the next scene would be them chopping some guy's manhood off. That wasn't a funny scene. Yeah, it was just straight up murder whenever they took the kid that kind of assaulted her at that party out into the woods. That wasn't a funny scene at all. That wasn't. There
Uh,
was nothing amusing about
that's
that.
what I'm saying. I'm saying that's what I was saying. Some scenes would be funny, some scenes wouldn't, but there was no. It was
Yeah,
just a very
it just wasn't consistent.
no. It was a very poorly edited movie. I think. Like you said, they were trying to. It was seemed like two movies were written and they tried to mold them together. It's like someone's idea, then someone else come in and said, "No, I'm going to change it to this," and they had to work around it.
That's really too bad because honestly, I
I
think
was looking forward to it.
I think what they need, I was looking forward to it, and I think that they need to get back to these smaller budget movies, uh, but they have to make them good. So Catherine Newton was in a movie that came out in the middle of the pandemic called Freaky, and it had Vince Vaughn in it. Uh,
It was funny.
that was a funny movie, and that movie came out like right whenever,
2020.
yeah, came out right in the middle of dopes walking around wearing 5 masks and getting 10 shots and all that stuff. And that movie did pretty well for when it came out. That was a funny movie. And the Catherine Newton, the girl in this movie, she plays these type of roles well. So I'm not going to blame her she just acted the way they told her to act. And
Oh yeah, the acting was great. Like the scene in the car where they're driving to the where she's having him. For some reason, he's been dead 300 years, but somehow he could drive a car
hell, he has GPS too. He went right to her house. I mean, how did he find that graveyard was in the middle of the forest or whatever? I mean, how did
miles
he get to
away.
her? Yeah, how did he get to her house? It did, and what tied him to her? She just
And
beat her.
you notice in just 2 hours, he went from just chomping, coming through the window to being able to work bedroom doors and closet bifolding closet doors. I think another thing they had like a 2.5 hour movie and they tried to cut it down to an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, I do not think they had a 2.5 hour movie out of this. Tops 90 minutes. I think they could have.
No, I think they shot it. I mean, it would have been it would have been an awful set for 2.5 hours, 2 hours,
Oh,
15 minutes. But I
yeah.
think
Would
they
you have wanted
filmed
to have
it.
been in that theater for 2 hours and a half? I mean, I was ready to go when the credits came. So I
That's
don't
what I
know.
want to see.
My final point on this movie is I'm going to highly recommend you go see Freaky. That was a good movie that stars this actress. I wouldn't waste my time on going to see this movie. I don't think it's going to do well, and I don't think it deserves to do well.
No, because it's great concept, and they just were trying to make this movie into trying to go in 3 different directions. They wanted to be 3 different genre movies, and it just didn't work. It was confusing. It was aggravating, in my opinion, for just because of the lack of explanations and a few things.
If I was a theater owner, I would be pissed off at Hollywood for not turning out a better January. This wasn't a very good month for movies. It really wasn't. January 2024.
Hey, I recommend The Beekeeper if we're talking about January movies.
Yeah,
We saw
Beaky.
that
Well,
last night and it was good. It's a very funny
yeah, actually, that's a good
concept.
point. If you're going to go to the movies right now, if you're going to go to the movies right now this week, what would you go see? And you haven't been and you haven't seen any of the movies that are currently out. What would you go see?
Beekeeper was funny.
If
Okay,
somebody came up to
Argyle,
me,
go see Argyle. If you want to
yeah,
go see a good movie, go see Argyle.
I think if somebody came up to me right now and was like, I haven't seen any of the movies that are out right now, what would you go see? It would be Argyle or Beekeeper. Those two movies are a fun time, a good time. This movie could have been a fun movie, but it wasn't.
Hey,
It just was
Argyle,
not.
you can take your kids to. It's a funny, it's a good money, it's a good movie. You take your kids to. I think your boys would like it. I don't know about girls. Now,
You
if
can
you want
take
to
your
go see
kids to this movie. This movie wasn't over the top raunchy. I mean,
no, but it just wasn't any good.
yeah,
Okay, anyone but you. If you're an adult, you want to go take a date to go see a funny rom com movie,
go see
please
that.
go see Anyone But You. This is a great Valentine's movie. Or
Poor Things was good. Now it was kind of a odd movie, but I mean, honestly, this movie probably
the
would.
reason I didn't recommend that is just because of all the nudity.
I'm gonna say no. I
No,
started this honestly. I started this review thinking I was gonna say I wasn't sure, but now I'm just gonna say no. It's not worth it. This is not a good
no.
movie.
Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to get more of our content. And please, prescribe. Please subscribe.
Subscribe. Yeah, some what Adderall? What are you
Subscribe.
talking about?
Please subscribe so we can bring you more content like
Yes.
this.
We promise that we're going to be going to Atlanta to film. We're going to get some shots of those hotels for DragonCon, and we're going to make a video that is going to go through some of these places that you might want to stay when you're going to DragonCon. Most important decision you can make at DragonCon is where you stay because you're going to spend a lot of money at that convention, and you don't want to get a bad hotel.
And some of the hotels we'll be showing you aren't or within a mile away, but some of the ones that are a little farther out or a nice walk. So you don't have to worry about a scary walk. We're not a big coast hotel people, so we're going to be showing you lots of hotels that aren't
But
host
we have
hotels.
stayed in host hotels, so we
Yes, we
can give
have,
you that perspective too.
but we don't. We're usually not the one that are booking host hotels.
We've stayed in. This will be our 17th Dragon Con, and I think we've
16th, you're 17th.
not 17th, and I think we've stayed in 10 or 11 hotels. How many?
11.
Yeah. So anyway, look for that video. It'll be up probably within a month because it'll take some editing time. Or I'll holler at you tomorrow and tell you what they said about that transmission.
Okay.
I'm going to stick that in the video. Nobody's going to know what the hell we're talking about.
Did you see that goat? Did you see that picture of the goat I posted on Facebook? How
Yeah.
she's
Did it
making it?
live? Is it going to live?
Yeah. Yeah. The vet said, well, she's not going to make it. They're not going to make it. Now she showed them wrong. But they charged me $200 just for friggin' IB and